It's March 9th, 2022. I'm watching the update from ABC World News Tonight with David Muir. The television, the state media, is saying the U.S. declares economic war. Now, here's the problem. I've been I've been stuck in New York with very little movement and very little way of whatever. So now I don't have this grand doctorate education or anything. I wasn't given that level of opportunity. It has to do something with this UN-US problem, I'm assuming, since it's United States of America is blanketed over the lower 48 states. It has a Mount Rushmore, it has national standards, and yet it's not operating with its ambassador at the correct level for which the land markers require. So there's some, I don't know what to call her, somebody else's nation's child who's sitting in a U.S. ambassador seat speaking to the Security Council at the UN. And right now, the New York State news media is alerting me that there's Putin in Russia, and then there's Zelensky and some gentleman with the first name that sounds like Italiano as a mayor in Ukraine. And then there's me in New York City with very little information because my communications have almost been knocked out. It's a larger affected area than I think anybody really realizes. How much, like, aviation, like the travel industry and this aviation has really taken a toll on the civilians, and the biological warfare now has whatever, causing even more massive shortages and crisis, it feels. So I'm watching this broadcast, and it says U.S. declares economic war. And I'm like, what U.S.? Now, they're not going to blame New York, are they? Because I didn't declare war. I didn't declare an economic war. In fact, I just arrived in 1978 and was hoping that the planetary bodies could get the heavenly body correct, so this way I could go to where I need to and happily ever after. And instead, here I am at age 43. So it goes from saying that there's this economic war on, like, the charts system of like the U.S. dollhouse dollar against the, I think they called it a ruble, which I just saw a picture of it the other night. It looked like it had a similar symbol to my sweatshirt, kind of, sort of, in a not really kind of a way. But I've never seen that before because, again, I've never been. And so then it goes to Ukraine. And now in Ukraine, there's this train that pulls up. And all of a sudden, like, these international student, I was never offered international student status. Nobody said it was an option. There was no applications afforded me. There was no meetings or recruiters that came to school, like study abroad. There was none of that. And so, but in Ukraine, They stop this train in, I call it leave, as in leave me alone. But of course, I've got different LEIF, LVIV, LEAV for whatever and whatever, whatever, whatever. And so these students get off the train from all over the traveled there for international student purposes. Now, this becomes a problem when there's this much travel, this much interest in other people's countries and economies and studying abroad. Like, oh my God, setting yourself up for future terrorists' networks. I mean, why do you keep growing the future terrorist networks larger by giving them access to your home safety and security and like territory and giving them college level educations and access? Oh my God, why? I mean, this is like this new human in their modernity, and I'm like, this is setting yourselves up for more. I mean, like, you won't make it. So, this is what it looks like on the TV.
This is unprecedented that a large economy, 150 million people, has been literally walled off from the rest of the global economy within a matter of days. More than two.
So they said Russia's too big, biggest puzzle piece. It'll never happen. But the problem is that this U.S. problem with aviation has grown so erratically difficult to control with the onslaught of the sports booking and the travel and leisure, where everybody's just rewriting history, rewriting laws. I mean, and they just keep allowing people to study one another in this massive experimental life science project, and they're growing themselves out of control.
National companies have now left or paused some of their operations. Nestle and Heineken now joining Starbucks, Coca-Cola and Pepsi. McDonald's also temporarily closing over 800 locations, more than 30 years after opening its first restaurant in Moscow.
I like it. You like it?
Amazon and Netflix adding to Russia's online isolation. Visa, MasterCard and American Express cards no longer work, and there's now virtually no way to make international payments here. In response to the sanctions, the Kremlin's press secretary warning, if you're asking me what Russia's going to do, Russia is going to do what's necessary to defend its interests.
And James Longman with us tonight from Moscow, and this language from the Kremlin tonight that the U.S. has launched an economic war on Russia, and Vladimir Putin is expected to address the Russian people tomorrow, James?
Now, does that just put the domestic terrorist networks in Africa and South America like in the correct like domicile position, or are they threatening North America too? Because like, how do you stop that level of like, what are you all doing?
Yeah, David, the bottom line is that whatever the consequences for his own people, Vladimir Putin cannot afford to be seen to lose this conflict. Russia is now the most sanctioned country in the world. He will address Parliament here tomorrow, likely with more plans on how he intends.
And he's being sanctioned by the UN, if I am listening to the state-led media education program at the moment, only thing I have access to, which is what they allow Couch Potato to know. And so now they're saying, so this one woman, who's not us, she's not U.S. of North America, where President Biden's White House is, she's not part of the family anchor. I'm a little confused. Is she the one who's making these calls to the Security Council to try to do this economic war? Is that the voice? And then that's throwing Putin into a defensive, which might now harm where my children and I are. Hello? Why are there employment issues in messengers and microphones? I'm just curious. Why is nothing neat and tidy the way that it should be? I know some people around the world won't even shake your hand if it looks like you come from the feral side of the tracks. I get them clearly. I don't want to live in the feral area either. But it is like, where do you go for like non-feral help?
Tends to save this economy. David.
James Longman in Moscow tonight. James, thank you. And now to the refugee crisis. More than 2 million Ukrainians have now escaped their country. And the images just today, tens of thousands fleeing in the middle of these fragile ceasefires, their terrifying escape during daylight hours. At one point, Russian snipers shooting at their cars. Matt Gutman from Lviv, Ukraine tonight.
Tonight, the desperate effort to escape during that fragile ceasefire.
Russian army.
There's a lot that I've seen of this inside Ukraine. And he has like the same nose as I do. And then there's this.
Region in northeastern Ukraine under fire for 2 weeks now, prompting those rescues in the rubble. Thousands bolting during that.
This looks like what I got going on in New York City. I've been watching it all day. There was shootings in Harlem. There was a stabbing at McDonald's. They didn't show subway attacks today. They've left the MTA out of this. But there's been a lot of crime in New York City. These, they're saying, are students studying in Ukraine. But it's still problems. It's still travel problems. And we have a voice problem somewhere else. And then we have causing refugee crisis. Then we have the moving and fluctuation in mass migration in like sociopathic and socioeconomic large area study programs. What I'm not clear of is why it's been so allowable. How do you keep anyone safe?
That daylight ceasefire nearly 40 hours later, arriving in Lviv.
By raise of hands, who's it from Sumi?
And then there's this section of they have nations, they have, I don't know what a nation consists of, but I thought it was a group of people. They have some kind of home territory, and then there's some kind of study and abroad problem at the moment. Why is there so much of that studying life sciences abroad when there's so much movement and so many wars happening simultaneously? Is it like studying abroad, like you did something great in your home territory, you get rewarded, and it's like an honor? What happened to that?
They tell me the Russian army was in the streets. They tried to flee by car, but they say Russians shot at them.
Oh, that's a bullet.
They told me that bullet.
And it's interesting because now the narrative, whatever.
Bullet went through their luggage. And we were there as the last night train pulled in. Children, hands against the window, parents with their bundles, and hundreds of med students pouring out looking shell-shocked and confused.
At least half of them appear to be students from abroad. Students from Egypt, Ecuador, Nigeria.
Egypt, Ecuador, Nigeria, in Ukraine. Really? I had Peru mentioned today. And it wasn't Haiti today, but it was Peru. Oh, and Guyana in New York mentioned. Because sometimes there are influx of population. I had the other night, they mentioned Pakistan, although I watched a broadcast on YouTube, and what was calling itself Pakistani here, under this besiegement, did not look like what was represented. Again, in that false communication, it gets very confusing when they keep moving and mislabeling themselves.
India, all over.
Standing on the platform, we saw Emmanuel, a fourth-year med student from Nigeria.
Did you have enough water to drink, food?
Asking him the question any parent would. Have you called home?
Did you tell them that you're now safe, that you're in Lviv?
Oh, I haven't yet.
Emmanuel's phone battery was dead, the fear of the past 2 weeks, and the relief now overwhelming. And outside the train station, we saw him again, helping him place that much-needed call.
Daddy, I'm fine.
David, the Ukrainian government said they had hoped to evacuate about 100,000 civilians today. They say only about 40,000 managed to escape. They say they expect another 6 humanitarian corridors to be opened tomorrow, including in the Kyiv region and in the battered port city of Mariupol. David.
Those corridors desperately needed. Matt Gutman reporting from Lviv for us tonight. Matt, thank you. And
this whole thing, the way that it's playing out from a couch potato, like in the moment perspective, with no voice prior, being held captive myself in some POW MIA with this, like, United States of America flag in this one section just below Canada. It gets really confusing being North American, but not knowing who to reach out to, and like not being brought into but nobody mentions the biological war. That's what, I mean, they stick really strictly to economy. Like, you hurt the economy or you hurt the supply chain, and then there's whatever. I heard one of the other newscasters say something about a fake whatever. I don't know what that's about. Again, they say these words, they know what they're talking about, but the average couch potato that's been left out of a level of education in our home territory, while all of these growing concerns are growing all over the place and moving all over the place like a moving target system, it's just like, how does one ever, like, I mean, protect anyone? How does anybody live a life worth living? I just don't understand it. It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole, Cattaruzza, it's Earth, Solar System, Milky Way, Universe, Galaxies, Broken. It's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.